Welcome back to the training videos for the 2020 to 2029 strategic plan of the Presbyterian Church of Ghana. And we are continuing with the implementation plan. This is the second video for that series, the second and the last. As usual, the training resources that we require is the strategic plan, chapter 9 and 10, and then the implementation plan, which can all be downloaded from the strategic plan resources at pcgonline.org. And like we said also previously, if you have any questions, please check the website that will be scrolling on your screens at any time. It is strategic plan at pcgonline.org, and you can send your questions and they will be answered. Under the implementation plan, we've looked at the underpinning principles and the first pillar, the facilitations, and we are looking at the rest under this topic. So this video 2 will focus on pillar 2, accountability, and then we'll mention pillar 3 and pillar 4 as tools for pillar 2 within a framework for goals and KPIs. And as we go on to other videos, we'll expatiate on pillar 3 and pillar 4. So this is mainly focusing on accountability. Accountability, pillar 2, accountability. For any system to be implemented, the people who are implementing should feel accountable to someone or to some people for them to be able to do it and do it well. Without accountability, people would not do what they are supposed to do. What is not inspected, it's not done. It's only what gets inspected, what gets monitored, what gets supervised, that gets done. So people must feel accountable, and there must be systems to hold people accountable, and this is what we are going to discuss. So first of all, we'll look at the accountability processes of the PCG, the governing and accountability processes of the PCG. Now, the PCG is governed by courts. There are 4 of these courts. And the courts, their responsibility is to take decision and set goals for the church. This is their main responsibility, to take decisions and set goals for the church. In fact, apart from the congregations where the sessions meet probably twice a month or once every week or so for the day-to-day governing of the church, so they get involved in implementation in one way or the other. The other courts probably at best meets once a year. And they delegate some of their responsibility to subsidiary courts like the councils and the standing committees to carry on some of their responsibilities. But the day-to-day management of each of the courts is left in the hands of others. So the court's main responsibility is to take decisions and set goals for the church. The courts also go ahead to provide the resources and authority to the principal officers to implement its decisions and achieve its goals. So when the court says, we've taken a decision, we've set goals, then they also approve a budget and then approve a constitution which gives authority to the principal officers and says that you can do A, B, C, or D. You have the power to act in our name in doing so many things. And you do those things, we give you the power so that you can implement our decisions and you can also achieve the goals that we've set. So the responsibility of the principal officers is to implement the decisions of the court and to achieve the goals of the court using the resources and authority that has been bestowed on them. And the governing courts, again, hold the principal officers to account every year. That's why reports are given to the court, the session, the district session, the Presbytery session, and the General Assembly. So they hold the principal officers to account. That's the role of the court. Now, the principal officers who have been given authority by the court and the resources will implement decisions and realize the goals not on their own, but with the support of directors, agents, committees, and staff. And these are structures that the Constitution has created through the courts. So these are the support system that has been provided to the principal officers to be able to do their work. And they have given the authority to direct these people in whichever way they think is appropriate. They receive advice from them and they direct them. And in directing them, they also hold them accountable for their stewardship. So there is the principal officers to hold account. The people they give work to do, they should hold them accountable. Without that accountability, the people they give the work to will do nothing. And in the system of accountability, they reward good performance and, of course, correct and or sanction poor performance or bad behavior. So this is really the role of the principal officers. And the parable of the talents, it's in operation in these accountability principles. Now, what are the elements of the accountability system? And this is very important, and we introduced the accountable officer earlier on, and the monitoring and evaluation officer will now tell you who they are under the system of accountability that we have. Then there must be goals, and there must be key performance indicators that the accountable officer and the monitoring and evaluation officers can use to evaluate the work of each other. And of course, there must be performance management systems to hold people accountable. So we'll look at each one of these as we move on. So who is the accountable officer? And we say it's an individual. You know, this is very important because our church operates on courts, councils, committees, but we also name people and give them responsibility. So when it comes to who is accountable, it's an individual who works within the court and is the most senior principal officer of the court. The principal officers are defined by the Constitution. For instance, at the General Assembly level, they are the moderator and the clerk. In the Presbytery, it's the chairperson and the clerk, and so on and so forth. So that's the most senior principal officer of the court. And that means in the congregation is the agent in charge. In the district is the district minister. In the Presbytery is the Presbytery chairperson. But in the GAO, it is the clerk, because there's no other court above the General Assembly. And this individual is held accountable for implementing decisions and achieving the goals of the court. Most of the time, the court above you and your own court. You are accountable for implementing its decisions and achieving the goals that it sets for you. And the accountable officer has the authority and manages the resources required for implementation. So you see how these words we've been using come back to us. He has the authority and manages the resources required for implementation. That's why he signs the checks. That's why he chairs meetings. That's why he can hire and fire. That's why he controls the budget and things like that. Now, so you have the accountable officer. He's the one who is supposed to act. He's the one who has been given the work to do. Then we have somebody who acts as the monitoring and evaluation officer. He is also an individual. And this case is the most senior principal officer of a higher court who has authority above the AO. So the person we are talking about here is that the monitoring and evaluation officer for the congregation agent in charge is a district minister, because the district is a court above the congregation, and the district minister is the most senior principal officer in that court. And again, like we said, except at the GAO, where the GAC as a body acts as the MEO. But in all the other cases, the monitoring and evaluation of the MEO is an individual. And his job is to agree targets, monitor, and evaluate the performance of the AO, of the accountable officer. So that's the key responsibility of the MEO, is to agree targets, monitor, and evaluate the performance of the accountable officer. And he has been clothed with the authority to reward or sanction the AO. He can start processes, he has to use the structures, but if he decides, then he can table these rewards or sanctions. So the accountability matrix, the intercourt accountability matrix, is what is shown now. The congregation, the AO is the agent in charge, and the MEO is the district minister. At the district minister now becomes the accountable officer for the district, and his monitoring and evaluation officer then becomes the Presbytery chairperson. At the Presbytery, the Presbytery chairperson becomes the accountable officer. He's the most senior person there, and the clerk of GA becomes his monitoring and evaluation officer in the General Assembly. And then for the GAO, the clerk of GA is the accountable officer. He manages all the directors to get the job done and is monitored by the GAC. So this is the intercourt accountability system. Now, when the accountable officer goes into his own court, then you also have to create the same system within the court. So, for instance, in the Presbytery, the accountability system is that the Presbytery chairperson now is accountable to the Presbytery Council within the Presbytery. So he has two accountabilities. One, to the higher court, which he exercises through the clerk of General Assembly. And in this case, his accountability within the Presbytery is with the Presbytery Council, Session Council. And he supervises the work of the district ministers and the clerk of Presbytery. So he becomes their monitoring and evaluation officer. And then the clerk of Presbytery organizes directors and staff. And then under the directors, we have the committees and sometimes also staff. This same process goes through the district. It is more direct. The district session council, district minister, and its superintends all the other groups, including the agents in charge, clerks, treasurer, and now IC, committee chairpersons, and staff. The same thing applies to the congregation. It's similar to the district. Now, let's now move from, so we have looked at the persons that are involved in the accountability system, the accountable officer and the monitoring and evaluation officer. Now, what are the tools that they use to be able to extract accountability? And one of the tools is the key goals and key performance indicators. And we'll be learning what these ones are. These are the measuring rod or the measuring rod for accountability. So how do we measure performance? We use goals and KPIs. This is the foundations for Pillar 3 and Pillar 4. Planning for implementation, you need goals and KPIs to plan. And performance monitoring and evaluation, you need goals and KPIs to monitor and see whether, evaluate if we are meeting the goals that we've set ourselves, the extent to which we are being successful. And pillars 3 and pillar 4 will be looked at in subsequent videos under this subject, under the subject of goals and KPIs. So we'll look at pillar 4 under goals and key performance indicators as we move forward. Now, the next element of the accountability system is performance management system. And this is a system that is put in place to help with the relationship between the AO and its MEO. So when the AO relates with the MEO, it's using the performance management system approach. So these are the tools that they use to relate with each other. So the MEO uses the performance management systems to hold the AO to account. And then the directors, committees, chairperson, and staff of the court by the AO. So the AO uses these same systems to hold to account the directors, the committee chairpersons, and staff. And the output documents from these processes, the output documents of pillars 3 and 4, that means the planning document and the monitoring and evaluation documents, becomes crucial input into this relationship. So you see how all these things are related. So if you've planned properly for the presbytery and you can account for what you've done through your monitoring and evaluation report, and then you can take output of this and they can use it to evaluate the performance of the accountable officer. And this is the processes we are discussing here. And this subject, this performance management system, is a subject of subsequent videos. So we'll not say much more about it here. We'll go into more detail to understand it. So this brings us to the end of the implementation plan. We've looked at the 2 videos. We've looked at the guiding principles, what measures gets done, and the setting SMART goals. And we've looked at the 4 pillars: facilitation. We've looked at accountability in this video. And then we've introduced pillar 4 and pillar 5, which is planning and monitoring and evaluation, which will be dealt with in later videos. Thank you very much. Like we've said, if you have questions, you can post them to Strategic Plan at PCG Online. It should be scrolling on the screen now, so that they are answered promptly to you.